So the Dunning Kruger effect, and by the way, I should emphasize that the popular understanding of the Dunning Kruger effect has been overstated. So I hope I'm not going to overstate it myself. So, but basically, what it means is the basic concept is this: that people who are highly skilled at something have the skills to allow themselves to judge how highly skilled they are. And so they tend to have more accurate self-perception of their own level of skill. Whereas if you actually don't have much skill, if you don't have much knowledge, you may in fact lack the ability to judge how little skill and how little knowledge you have, right? And as a result, what you find is that people at the low end of the skill knowledge spectrum tend to have inflated views of the quality of their skill and knowledge, right? And again, if you want to see illustrations of this, I suggest you go to Twitter, because it's the sort of person, we see this all the time. It's a Twitter constant that, Professor so-and-so who has spent his or her entire life studying subject X will pop up and say, in regard to subject X, here are a few facts. And then some anonymous person with a whole lot of numbers in their name will show up and say, oh, well, actually, Professor, let me explain this to you, sir. And that
my mate at the pub reckons.
Exactly. And so that is, again, one of those really basic insights. What you're seeing when you see somebody do that is you see somebody succumbing to. One way to think about this is the brain is like a compulsive hypothesis generator, right? You encounter some facts, some statistics, some evidence. You see something. The brain compulsively wants to explain things, right? The last thing the brain wants to do is look at a bunch of information and say, what does it mean? Damned if I know, right? The brain hates to say, I don't know. And so what it's doing is it's constantly generating these explanations, these hypotheses. Well, in science, a hypothesis is, of course, it's a possible explanation for future investigation and future testing. A theory, by contrast, is in fact an explanation supported by substantial evidence. The problem is that ordinary folks in their ordinary decision-making confuse the two. And so your brain pops up with, oh, you've just seen something? Oh, well, I have an explanation. It's obvious. Here's the explanation. And rather than saying to yourself, well, that's a hypothesis, and it's a thank you for that hypothesis, that is worth exploring further, but it's not established yet. Now, that's how a scientist would deal with it. Instead of doing that, natural human decision-making is, boom, here's not a hypothesis, but a theory that is supported by evidence. This is the conclusion. This is the truth. And so we make this immediate giant leap from here's one possible explanation to here is the explanation. And so what you're seeing when you see somebody on Twitter doing that is they're making that leap to this is the explanation. And it never occurs to them to think, but are there other possible explanations? And that mistake, again, is really, really fundamental. And again, it goes back to really basic brain wiring. And we are wired that way for good evolutionary reasons. Very often it's useful and helpful, but in the modern world, also it is very not useful and not helpful.